Well, I thought I knew Mexico before coming. I visited Mexico countless of times as a kid. As a kid, we used to go to Nogales all the time, Navajo. With my mom, we went to Jalisco a lot. We went to Guadalajara, Tequila. I visited plenty of times Mexico. But it's just different living in Mexico and visiting Mexico. So that's what I want to talk about today. What's the differences between living in Mexico and visiting Mexico? In reality, this really applies to almost every country. If you're new here, my name is Adrian. I moved here to Mexico about a year and a half now. We've been living here in Pachuca now for about 5 months, I think. So based on that experience, I've been able to see my point of view basically since we moved here and the differences between visiting Mexico and living in Mexico. My goal is that I'll do this weekly series called Sitdown Sunday. So join me. If you're new to this channel, please like and subscribe. I appreciate your support. This channel is therapy, I guess, for me. It's fun. I should just go to therapy, right? But no, this is just fun. It's fun, and I'm using this as like a weekly self-reflection about my experiences moving here, as well as the fun things, the things I didn't expect, the lessons I learned through this experience of moving to a different country. Again, it's our country, but moving back, I guess, to Mexico. So let's get started. So I had to kind of unlearn some things. In the States, it's a lot more fast-paced, so I had to kind of unlearn that, had to slow down a bit, be more present. I think in the States, it's very easy to not be present, almost just be cruising in life. You can go days without talking to people, besides maybe grocery stores. But here in Mexico, it's been an awesome change, a good positive change that I've loved since I moved here. I mean, I knew it because of my family, right? But like once you live here long term, you get to really see, your culture. The Mexican culture is so loving and kind and just so welcoming. Honestly, everyone's been really kind to us, Lynette and I. And I had to learn to kind of slow down a little bit. I think the locals here are, I don't know, what's the word? Grateful? There's more gratitude. I see more gratitude here for what they have, and it doesn't seem like there's this consistent striving to, wealth, I guess. I mean, there is wealthy people in Mexico, no doubt, but it just feels a little bit slower paced, It's more family oriented. People care about their families and making sure everyone's okay. And I find that very beautiful. I find that very beautiful how it's a lot more family focused, not individual focused. And I hope that makes sense. My goal, my intention with these videos is not to offend anybody, right? These are just my perspectives based on my experience, and I've been loving living here in Mexico with my wife. I think that's like point number one, I think. Just people are kind, and it's a slower pace of life. And it's a pace of life that I enjoy, There's a lot more, when you visit a country, like you visit Mexico, you might be focused on the things to do, like, tourist attractions, the colors, the music, the food, and all those things are beautiful here in Mexico. But the difference between living here is that now you'll notice how every day, how Mexico wakes up every morning, the sounds of Mexico. If you've ever lived in Mexico City, especially, there's very unique sounds to Mexico, whether it's salespeople, people collecting trash, collecting metal. I would put those audios here, but I think they're copyrighted. But they're iconic. If you visit Mexico City specifically, you'll hear these sounds that just define Mexico. And I think when you're visiting, compared to living, when you're visiting Mexico, you just see all the touristy spots, and you might not notice the nuances of the locals, how they treat each other, how they speak to each other. the kindness in everyone's words. Also the rush in Mexico City. I mean, if you ever lived in a big city, New York City is probably, is the same. There's areas where it's just run and gun, run and gun. But I think that's something I've loved about living here is getting to know the other side of Mexico, what locals get to experience. The local treatment when you go to the same taco stand over and over again, or just the kindness of the people. Hopefully I didn't make that too long. Another thing that's different, or I guess point two of the differences between visiting Mexico and living in Mexico is that when you visit, I mean any country, but I'm specifically speaking about Mexico. When you visit Mexico, you're a guest, right? You're a guest in someone else's country. Even though my family's from here, right? I've reiterated that a couple of times, so it does feel closer to home, right? But you're still a guest. You're still a guest in someone's space. You need to respect that space and treat it with love that you would expect if anyone visited your home, right? So as a visitor, you feel like a guest. I think you're self-aware that you're a guest. You try your best to, not to offend anybody, and not that when you're a local you get to offend people, but you see the treatment is different, right? Because they don't see you as a tourist, they see you as someone who lives here, someone who shares land with you and community, So that's something that you experience as a visitor, is you feel as a guest. But once you live here, get to eat in people's homes, and they treat you with the hospitality. You're not running around doing touristy things, but you're getting to know the people locally. It's just beautiful, It's a different experience. They both have its place, But I truly believe and value like slow travel. Maybe you've heard this terminology before. But it's basically a belief that I agree with, especially if you can. I understand that not everyone can do this, but if you can travel slow, even if it's for a weekend, instead of filling it up with things to do, to enjoy your time, do less things, but get to enjoy the time with the locals, get to know them. There's so many ways to do that. If you think that's something you want me to discuss later, a couple resources that are valuable to do things more with locals, feel free to comment in this video and let me know what video you want me to make next. But in this Sit-Down Sunday, my goal is to highlight those nuances, right? So as a local, you get to have that experience. You get to know people's stories, how over generations they've lived in the same area, and how much they value the food and how excited they get when you get to taste their food. It's beautiful. It's really genuine and humble, and it's beautiful. It's something I don't really remember experiencing in the States, is when someone feels like they're sharing a part of themselves through food, through music, and through experiences, and it's something nice, right? Because I get to enjoy these new experiences, but also I enjoy seeing the joy it brings to people when they get to share those experiences with others, So that's another difference, I would say. As a tourist, you're a guest, and when you live here, you're still a guest, right? You're still a guest to a certain extent, but the treatment and the time you get to spend with locals, and it slowly starts becoming a home. And the reality is, because we've only been here a year and a half, there's still moments where I still feel like a guest. It's not something that just turns off and like, oh yeah, I'm a local. I know I'm speaking English here, but we don't speak English unless I'm speaking with my wife, but we speak in Spanish with everybody else. Hablamos en español. So we treat people with that respect, right? We're not going to force someone to speak a different language because that's not their own. But where was I going with this? I was just trying to get to, I don't know what I was trying to get to. Wow, I lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. Well, that's the point. That's the point of this. Hopefully you're still here. I appreciate you for even watching this video. These videos are like almost like self-induced therapy. No, self-induced, just reflections, right, of my experiences. So that's another difference between visiting Mexico and living in Mexico. Another true reality about living and visiting is that when you visit Mexico, everything's very romanticized, right? Everything's beautiful, vibrant colors, and the food, and fun, which is not incorrect. But once you're living, right, that's not the case, you know? You gotta start fighting with traffic and grocery lines. And like here in Mexico, something that was new to us, like we buy garrafones of water. Garrafones are basically the 5-gallon jugs of water. You can buy them in the States too. But if you want purified water, I mean, there's certain cases that people have filters and stuff, but we decide to choose these garrafones of purified water that we receive. We have like 6 of them, and we buy them like every 3 weeks, every month. We refill all 6. But that's a new experience, right? Like, you know, when you're visiting as a tourist, you don't get to experience that. Or when you run out of gas. There's been days where, you know, we're taking a shower and we run out of gas, right? So we gotta call the gas guy, like, hey, come refill our gas. And he comes super fast and super kind, but that's a new experience, like little frustrations like that. A lot of potholes everywhere, you know? Just, again, new experiences that you get to, you know, appreciate long term. Especially in the beginning, I think Lynette and I were overwhelmed with the sounds of, like, especially Mexico City. Like, Mexico City is very loud in various times, right? Not the whole day, but there's moments where it's just really loud. And at first, like, Lynette and I were, yeah, like overwhelmed, honestly, overwhelmed. Especially, you know, I remember the first time when we, you know, when we first moved from New York to Mexico. I arrived to Mexico City first by myself, and I remember there was like 3 days that I was by myself without Lynette, or 2 days. And I remember thinking, like, man, this is new, this is crazy, we're living here. And then the noises I didn't expect, just people selling things and walking by, and you know, the water guy, the guy who sharpens knives, and there's various services that are announced via sound. So that was new to us, you know, and at first we were overwhelmed. But funny enough, over time we came to like miss it, you know, because now we live in Pachuca, and we no doubt love Pachuca in its own way. And I think we would still prefer the quiet of Pachuca versus Mexico City. But I can't lie and say that there hasn't been days where, like, oh, I miss those sounds. I don't know why. It's nostalgia. It's the, like, wow, we live in this massive city and it's alive and people are doing things and it's exciting. And I think people who live maybe in New York City might understand where I'm coming from, where it feels like you're part of something bigger. I don't know. It's super cool. I don't know where I went with that. I feel like I went off tangent. But yeah, that's something that I think was new to us, those challenges of being the little things that we didn't realize, you know, getting health insurance, car insurance, how to get a license here, how to, you know, get an ID, where to buy things, where do we buy clothes, where do we buy this and that. And the locals have been super kind to help us and guide us to do those things. But I guess, I mean, we realized that was going to be the case, but I guess you don't realize it completely until you're here and you're learning and you're doing stuff. If you want some crazy stories about how some challenges we face when moving to Mexico, comment below and let us know if you want me to share. Maybe in the next Sitdown Sunday, we can talk about a couple stories that some fun adventures and challenges we faced here in Mexico. Yeah, so the reality is, I mean, this applies really to every country. When you visit and live, it's much different, you know. There's beauty in both. I am a firm believer that if you could slow travel, do it, you know. If you're going to visit Italy, you know, even if you're going to visit for a week or less than a week, if you could do less, funny enough, I personally believe you get more out of the experience than checking a bunch of boxes. If you feel the same, like this video, you know, let me know if you think the same as me. Maybe I'm crazy. I just truly believe in slow travel. I think it's a very self-rewarding way to travel. Yeah, so those were a couple reasons. Let me see if I've missed anything. yeah, I think those are a couple reasons. I don't want to make these videos too long. These sit-down Sundays, my goal is, again, I've already mentioned it, like a self-reflection. And I want to do these weekly where I discuss a different topic of our experiences here, sit down in different places. Right now, I'm in our local, where we live. It's like a local community. So hopefully every week I sit down somewhere else and get to just be vulnerable and just express our experiences here. And just to summarize this, I feel like the difference between visiting Mexico and living in Mexico is that when you visit, you get to see the beauty of a country, the beauty of Mexico, the food, the colors, the sounds, the music. But living in Mexico, you get to learn patience, humility, growth, self-improvement. So in reality, it's almost like when you visit, it touches like a memory, right? It becomes a memory of a beautiful experience. But living, it shapes you and makes you a little bit better in who you are. Traveling in general does that. It helps you understand people and their sacrifices and their pain and what they go through, and trying to give back and help people like that is a beautiful experience. So if you like to Sit Down Sunday, I would appreciate the comments and the love. This is like super uncomfortable for me. I'm challenging myself. This is something I'm not again used to. If you've seen my previous projects before, I've done podcasts with friends of mine, with my wife, the Interview Podcast. Those who know what that is, shout out to you guys. I appreciate your love. We got the Interview Podcast. I did a podcast with Carlos about reading books. So I've always wanted to create things, but I always feel like I needed someone else to be part of it. I never felt like I was good enough. I brought enough value to somebody to even watch. And I'm trying to challenge myself, get out of that, break that bubble, and hopefully it brings some value to you. I hope. But this does bring value to me. So I'm gonna keep doing these as self-reflections, and hopefully in the future I'll get to watch these back with joy and laughter and just gratitude that I did it, because there's so many things telling me to stop. So I appreciate you guys following, liking, and subscribing. And I'll see you next time.